What were you hoping to happen in your lesson?
That students were able to successfully write a sentence with a compound word and can identify a compound word.
So what happened during your lesson?
I started with an anchor chart and asked the students if they knew what a compound word was. Mm-hmm. And then they responded, and then we made an anchor chart making compound words and identifying them. And then the students in the classroom did a scoot around the room where they found the two different words to make one new word, to make a compound word. And I had a chart on the whiteboard, and it had a picture, and then they had to put the new words by the picture. And I guess then they wrote their 3 sentences. And then they made a compound rainbow, and that's how I assessed the students.
So when you asked the question, what is a compound word, what were you expecting the students to say? Were you expecting them to know the answer, or was this supposed to be like a new concept for them?
I knew it was a new concept because I knew that they slightly went over it last year. But they had a rough class last year. Over half of the class could identify what a compound word was, but I have about 5 students that are lower level learners, and they could not identify what it was, but they could, by the end of the lesson, they could write a sentence with using a compound word, and now they can. But at the beginning, they did not.
How do you think your scoot activity helped them?
It gets them up and moving. At the carpet, they see the words. We went over it. We reviewed it. Then they had the pictures on the wall to help them. Okay, I see a butterfly. I need to look for butter, and then I need to look for a fly. And then they could go to the wall and go put that. And then, so they're seeing it and they're reading it. And then they could put the 2 words together.
That's something that I did notice, was that you had, on the scoot activity, you had pictures, and I really liked that, mm-hmm. because even the kids who maybe couldn't read it would recognize that that's what it was. And I know some of them weren't familiar pictures, and so you're introducing them to new words as well. Do you see a connection between your scoot activity and the students' success with writing their sentences?
Yes. It definitely helped them familiarize themselves with, hey, those are 2 words, and I can make a compound with it, compound word to make a new word. And when they wrote the sentences, they wrote the sentences correctly. They had capitalization, punctuation, and they used it in a correct form, and they used, the word correctly. So it went hand in hand.
So talking about your assessment, did you expect students to use the list of words that you create as a class, or did some students venture outside of that?
Some of the students ventured out. I had about 5 of them that ventured, and they did not use any of the words that we had on the wall. But of course, those lower level students, they used the word wall to help them guide them to make the sentences, which was perfectly fine. As long as they could use it in a sentence, I was okay with that. Also, while assessing them, I assessed them one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So I didn't, so if someone didn't know how to use it, then that was confidential between me and the student, mm-hmm. and no one else would know if they couldn't identify the word.
Well, I felt like that was a good accommodation. It allowed your students to have a word bank to use, mm-hmm. which allowed your lower students to be more successful. I feel like it would really help those 5 students that you were talking about.
Yeah.
What do you think the strengths of your lesson were?
I felt like the introductory was pretty good. I feel like scaffolding my lesson was probably my highest point in my class. I know where my students basically sit, so I know which students are going to need the most support, and I know which students I need to push further and give them more work so I can actually have time to work with the lower level students. Like I said, scaffolding, I think that was probably my best strong suit of giving the higher learners multiple words and then only giving my lower levels one word at a time.
Yes, I noticed that you did that during your lesson, and I was very pleased to see that you were already extending your lesson for the ones that were higher while also adjusting it for the kids who needed the lower level. Now, one thing I would mention is like assigning them, because I know when you were at the carpet, you were just saying, oh, you have A, B, C. I would pre-assign them and say, like, your lower ones, give them the images that you know that they understand, and they'll be more successful because then they might gain some more confidence with that. And that would be just be a quick adjustment for you to make. But what you did was perfectly fine because all of the kids understood it. And even with that one word where they found the two words that made it, but they put them backwards, the tie bow, I thought that was a good teaching point at that moment, and you and the whole class caught on to that. Well, obviously you did, but even your students caught on to it, so they realized, like, hey, order does matter whenever you have these two words that you're putting in. What do you think you would like to do differently next time?
I think during the introductory, I think I could pose the question, what is a compound word? Students could have a whiteboard. They could write their answer down. They could turn and talk with a partner prior to answering, or give them a compound word and then have them see, okay, which word in the sentence is the compound word, and can you identify which one it is? And then start it off that way. That
would be a good pre-assessment, and then you already have your post-assessment where they're writing the sentences with those compounds. I think that would be a good adjustment, and it, like I said, it'd be super quick.
Yeah.
I might also actually add to you said today we're going to be learning about compound sentence, which was awesome because it made the students realize compound word. It made the students realize that they're focusing on a compound word. It gave them that academic vocabulary, but you didn't tell them why. Why is it important? So that's just something that you could do to help them be even more engaged. But all of your students were very engaged in the lesson. And like you said, you would adjust that introduction of the lesson. And whenever I was looking at it, I think that was the most that I noticed where the students weren't as engaged, because if they didn't know it, they couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones could. What else would you do that is the same as what you did? What would you like to keep next year?
I would definitely keep the scoop. It really gets the students up and walking instead of just sitting at the carpet or staying at their desk. My kids are very hyperactive kids, so they have to be constantly moving or else they get bored and then they just twiddle their pencils around and they don't want to work. I would definitely do that. I really liked doing the assessment the way I did, having them write the 3 sentences and then we conference after they're done. So they know, hey, this is something I needed to keep working on. They could go back to their desk, and when they're done, we could reevaluate it and then go from there. And I think that's all I would keep the same. I would probably change up the introductory a little bit just to kind of get them more engaged.
Did it provide the outcome that you wanted?
Yes, it did. By the end of it, everyone could successfully write 3 sentences with a compound word, and they could identify in the sentence which was the compound word. Thank you.
So what do you think your next focus should be for our next observation? What would you like to work on? Or what would you like me to look for?
Probably. During the introductory, I would do more student engagement, and making sure that they are paying attention. And before I answer the questions, or before I ask the questions, that they're kind of getting interacted prior to giving them the sentences and the words.
Well, I just want to say thank you for letting me come into your classroom and watch you teach this lesson. And I know sometimes that can be a little stressful, but you did a wonderful job. And thank you for taking the time now, I know you're busy, just to do this debriefing.
Thank you.